All right. Let's share my beautiful presentation here. Okay. Hi, everybody. We're here today for our indoor plant care with Greener Spaces North. Lauren has graciously donated her time and some great prizes for all of us attending today. As people are coming in, I will still pop them in, but as of right now, we're started, ready to go. My name is Louise. Louise Godet. I'm the branch head of the CM Shields Public Library. That's the library in the South Porcupine area. I'm also the founder of the Seed Library there. So today, Zoom etiquette, I'm sure we're all getting used to this. This event is being recorded. Please be kind, feel free to chat. You have the chat room. I will filter those questions. We could still have a question and answer period at the end instead of doing it in the chat. That's okay too. Write down your questions, we can wait, or you can pop them in there and I'll ask them later if you don't feel comfortable. So that's all okay. We're in a safe space here, okay? You can use your reactions at the bottom too if you wanted, at the bottom of our Zoom program. Don't be shy to use it. So Lauren is here today from Greener Spaces North. She's graciously accepted to give us a presentation on indoor plant care. If you're anything like me, you've probably killed a few plants. So Lauren doesn't claim to be an expert, but we could call her plant experience as trial and error, as we probably all have done a little. So I'm sure we've all done some of this, but she wasn't very good with plants when she first started, and her mom dropped her off a lemon tree as a housewarming gift. Apparently this tree sat in a dark room and almost died several times, and until she set up her new home. So then she started adopting more plants, and then we all know how that goes, right? She hasn't had too much luck with succulents, neither have I. You know, it's one of those things. I'm trying, but you know, so she's doing a lot of research now with grow lights and other techniques. And as you can see behind her, she's got lots of great plants there. So she soon realized, of course, that she was hooked. She loves growing and propagating plants, and then obviously sharing them with you and I. I've purchased a few African violets from her, and they're doing fantastic. And they're always very healthy, and service is always fantastic. So let's let Lauren get going on her presentation. Don't forget that we will do, we're gonna do question and answer after, but we do like to keep this as a conversation. So if you have your cameras on, lift up your hand. You have the hand at the bottom under your reactions. You can always pop up a hand there or put it in the chat and we can have a chat, okay? So I'm gonna give it off to Lauren. Let's go. Let's do some learning.
Thanks for the introduction, Louise. Hi, I'm Lauren from Greener Spaces North. I'm joining you today from my plant room, which used to be a spare bedroom, and then the pandemic hit and I had no need of a spare bed. So I slowly replaced all of the furniture in the room with some plant shelves, and it got a little out of control, but I'm loving the space now. And it's like the happiest room in the house. There's 1,000 plants in here.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is a lot, especially when they all need watering or maintenance, but this is where I grow all of the plants that I sell on my website. I really love propagating plants, which is making more plants from the plants I already have. So I dedicate a lot of space to that. Anyway, today you asked me to talk about things like when to water your plants and how to water your plants. So I purposely let a couple of them dry out, and they're not very happy with me right now. One of the ones that I think is very common to people is this Monstera deliciosa. This one's a lot smaller than the one that I have downstairs. This one's just a baby, but I haven't watered it in 6 or 7 days now, and it's really starting to droop. These leaves are usually really, really firm and really perky. And if I pull it out of the liner pot here, I can see that my soil is dry. I can stick my fingers down in here. Super dry. There's no moisture in there. I would be soaking this to water it, which is how I usually water the big ones. I soak them every few days, let them dry out, and then this guy will be very, very happy. And she's about to put out a new leaf too.
Pretty how they roll out like that, eh?
It is really pretty. That's one of my favorite parts of watching these plants grow. I have a lot of brand new philodendrons, and watching them put out really big, stunning leaves is just such a nice time. But I'm a plant nerd, so what can I say?
Hi, Amy.
Other plants like this string of hearts have different ways to tell when they're really, really dry. So I have two of these string of hearts silver glory right here.
I love those. And
they're very pretty. They're very like delicate, lots of strings. And the one that doesn't need water, this guy's pretty good right now. If I look at the really big hearts kind of down in the pot, they're really firm. I can squeeze them. They're not wrinkling. They're not like curling up. I know that this guy's really well watered, and I'm not going to give him any more water right now.
Okay.
But the one that I've been neglecting for this plant chat, if I take a look at the leaves here down in the pot, so these are the biggest ones, the adult ones. They should be really firm. When I go to squeeze them, they're like floppy little tortillas or something. Like I can easily roll these leaves, and I know that they're really thirsty. So this plant stores water in its bulbs, and if I gave the other one some water, the bulbs could rot. Like there might still be moisture in the soil. There's nowhere for the plant to store the water. So this guy, I'd be watering pretty thoroughly. And since I've got this sort of in a liner cup inside my old candle here, I'd probably be bottom watering it. So I'm going to fill this with like 4 inches of water, stick it in there. I'm going to leave it for an hour and then drain all the water out. So it's soaked up all of the water that it needs, and I can let it dry out again. So that's true.
Good way to reduce and reuse.
Yeah, exactly. But also I have so many plants, I've got to be creative about how to store them because I'm always buying pots. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've got quite a few of the string of hearts plants beside me. I've got a few different types, and they're all kind of draping, growing down here. They grow really, really well in ambient bright light, which is kind of my whole plant room. So I've got them everywhere. One of the fastest growing ones is this string of needles. I don't know if you can tell, but it's unstoppable. It's several feet long now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, anyway, but they're just so pretty, but that's what I use to grow all of the plants on my website. So I propagate from these ones.
That's right. Those string of hearts are special.
They are, and I needed every type of them. I don't know. I like having all of the different varieties because they're fun to look at and it's fun to see the differences.
Yep.
My littlest one is the variegated one, but it's starting to trail, which is very, very pretty. Anyway, soon it'll be big.
That's good. Like that. That's my next one.
String of hearts. That's right. We talked about a custom plant for you, right? With the mixed string of hearts and string of spades. It's gonna be very nice. I'll work on it later today.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Anyway, I think you also asked me to talk about repotting some plants.
Yep.
Okay, so most plants really like to be root bound. That's how healthy houseplants that are healthy like to be nice and snug in their pot, so they don't have a lot of extra space to store water and extra space where like bacteria are going to grow, right? So if it's nicely filling out its pot, that's perfect. I don't like to put it in a really, really big pot. I like to keep them snug. So I've got a couple of examples. This is Syndapsis exotica. So it's been planted here in this pot since maybe March, February. So I can tell kind of when I'm squeezing the nursery pot that there's quite a lot of space still in the pot. The roots aren't pressing up against the side. There's not really any roots poking out of the bottom. This wouldn't be one that I'd repot, even though it looks like it might be growing out of its pot. And in fact, if I pulled it out, I'm sure we'd see that the roots might be filling it out, but there's lots of space. Like it's not root bound even a little bit. There's lots of soil still in there. That's not one I'm going to repot for a really long time.
So just because it's got nice everywhere on top doesn't necessarily mean that it's too big in the dirt itself.
Exactly. And most of these, like when you take them home, most of them don't need to be repotted for like a year, especially the Scindapsus. They grow really slowly. They like to be root bound, like really snug in their pots, and they'll grow better on top if they're nice and strong and secure in their pots. But conversely, I've got this pothos, and pothos is like a wicked vigorous grower, and these guys fill out their pots right away. And this guy's maybe half the age of the other one, but it's got roots coming out all over. When I'm holding the same nursery pot, it's the same size as the other one, you can see the roots kind of like bunching out on the sides. Exactly. Yeah. And if I were to pull this one out of the pot, it's probably quite a bit more compacted in the bottom. I have to even like
without breaking it.
Exactly. These nursery pots are really flexible, so that makes it really easy to repot and slide them out. But this guy,
wow,
like this guy's like 5 months old and he's already growing out of his pot. This is one that I need to like loosen up all of these roots and put it into a pot a little bit bigger.
And just a little bit bigger, right? You wouldn't go straight to a big pot.
Well,
how
exactly.
How much bigger would you go? Just maybe an inch or so?
Exactly. This is a 5-inch pot. You could probably go up to like a 6 or a 7. And you loosen up all of the roots and kind of spread them out into the pot and fill it in with some new soil. Pothos especially likes a really light and airy soil. So what I use is mostly bark. It's a mixture of orchid bark, and it's actually some reptile bedding bark that I buy on Amazon. It's I think it's an Exoterra brand anyway, but it's nice little bark chips, and it's really, really good for pothos roots because it lets them just like expand and fill in all the spaces between the bark.
But I often use succulent dirt in some of my plants just because I have a tendency of overwatering.
Yes.
So it gives it a little bit more of a better chance with it drains it out faster.
Absolutely. I add a lot of extra perlite to my soils for the exact same reason, so that the water it drains a lot easier from the soil. And especially when I water like the pothos and Scindapsus and stuff, I'll soak them and then just pour out the extra water from the cover pot.
Okay.
And that way I know that they're not sitting in water. They don't have like wet feet. They're not going to rot. Obviously that pothos needs a pot upgrade, but and you'd water a lot more carefully when you repot it, just so it doesn't have really soaking spots to rot the roots.
That's right. So how would you know how much water, if you should water from the top, from the bottom? Like I'm sure you have quite a few to water. It might get a little bit hard if you have to sit there with every one.
I'm really bad at overwatering. I'll be honest, I kill a lot of plants by overwatering, especially because I have so many. I get really lazy at watering, and I tend to bottom water a lot of my plants, especially in this room, because all of the plants are in big trays. And I usually, if it's a nice full tray of plants, I usually will pour about an inch of water in the bottom and let them soak it up. So I do a lot of checking the plants before I bottom water to make sure that they're ready to drink as much as I'm about to water them.
Okay. And how would you know how if they were ready for much water or a little water when you're checking the soil?
Well, if they're all the way dry, I'm going to water them really, really thoroughly. I try to bottom water everything because top watering can encourage pests like fungus gnats, which are those little annoying fruit flies that fly all over. I have a lot of plants. I have a lot of problems with these pests. So by bottom watering, it usually keeps the top inch quite dry, and that's a bad environment for fungus gnats. So you stick it in the pot and it measures the moisture level of your soil. I don't tend to use those. I usually use the old-fashioned way. I stick my finger in the pot, I see how dry it is, or I'll like crunch the pot and hear whether I can hear it crunching like a bag of chips, then I know it's really, really dry. And if not, I know it's still moist in there. But a lot of these plants I've almost killed with overwatering, and I've almost always killed them.
Looks like my internet connection.
Like if the leaves are drooping and they start to turn pale, you know they're really thirsty.
Yeah. Yeah, so turning pale is a good sign, like if it's yellowing or drooping, you said earlier.
Yellowing is usually a sign of something bigger. Like if my leaves were turning yellow, then I would definitely be concerned that there's a pest or maybe I've overwatered. But I find when a lot of vibrant plants are really thirsty, they'll get a little bit paler. Like some of mine here. Let me grab this one down here. This is a Tradescantia purple heart. When it's really thirsty, its leaves lose a lot of vibrancy. It doesn't have this intense purple, it's more of a gray purple. And I know just by looking at it, this guy's really thirsty. He's pretty thirsty right now anyway.
It's a beautiful color, that one.
They are. I love the different colors of plants, and I try to collect some of the different colors, just it makes me happy.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I use a moisture meter to save time, is what Michelle says in the chat. Yeah, I've tried the moisture meter. You were saying earlier that you're not too fond of the moisture meter or don't really use it.
Well, you know what, I think it's a fantastic tool. I have way too many plants to start using it. So that's why I eyeball it for most of my plants. I usually err on the side of underwatering, if anything. And also, you know which plants need a lot of water. Some of them, if they dry out, they're toast, absolutely, right away. But most of them, and most of the ones that I like, all of the ones behind me, they like to dry out a little bit.
That's probably a good idea, right? In between watering, so that you don't get disease or pests, is to let them slightly dry out.
Exactly, absolutely.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? No? So you were talking about propagating earlier, or sometimes when they become root bound and then you change them into a slightly bigger pot, don't go too crazy. But what would you do if you broke off a piece of your beautiful string of hearts, let's say? Can you propagate that way?
Absolutely, absolutely. I propagate plants 3 different ways. Usually water propagation is good for most types of plants. I also use moss propagation and soil propagation. So water prop is the easiest. It's the most accessible for anyone. If you have a glass of water, go for it, because it's very, very satisfying to see the roots grow in. For string of hearts specifically, they can be water propped. I find them better with moss prop, but I'll show you both.
Okay.
Let's take a little snip. So
I've never heard of moss propagating. That's cool.
It's something that I only recently got into. I do a lot of research with different methods, and moss prop was recommended a lot. Most people use moss. It's sold as a product for reptiles. So it's already been sterilized and it comes in a compressed brick of moss, but I find it a little less expensive than sphagnum moss, and it has shorter strands, which I like because, well, I'll show you. When you're trying to moss prop, a lot of the time the roots grow into the moss and it's really, really hard to separate the moss and the roots.
Okay.
So this is silly, but I use a lot of like grocery store packages. This is a package from, I want to say Croissants. This is what I use for moss prop. It's not very professional, but it's perfect for this use because it keeps all the humidity inside. So in here, I've got some moss prop philodendrons that I started probably 2 weeks ago. We've got some micans on top and some brandiatum and some philodendron Pederaceum neon. This one's also called lemon lime.
Okay.
These are pretty popular plants, so I propagate them a lot. Philodendrons can be fussy with water prop. Sometimes I find the nodes will rot off, especially if it's a little bit cool in the environment. So I like moss prop because it keeps them nice and warm. I stash them here with my grow lights. The light helps them grow roots a lot faster.
And they're warmer.
Exactly. They're warmer. And when I pull out these guys and I pull some of the moss off, these guys are about 2 weeks old and they've already got pretty decent little roots. So I'd be planting these in about another week, probably.
Okay. Is that what our big plant is at the library, Amy? You knew I was going to ask you, didn't you? That great big one. Is it a philodendron?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Our big one is the
Monstera?
Yeah, that one, which
Okay.
doesn't like me. So
Well, clearly the leaves have yellowed. So we've got
bit.
something.
And they're a bit older leaves that can probably be taken off. So
This plant is huge. Like it's huge. So we'll have to have a look and chat. And this is my partner, Lauren, at the library in South Park. She takes care of most of my plants. So we've been trying to decide what's going on with this one. That's why I mentioned the yellowing leaves.
Oh, fantastic. Is it a Monstera adansonii or a Monstera deliciosa?
deliciosa, Swiss cheese
Deliciosa?
plant, the Swiss cheese one, whatever they
Yeah.
call it. Yeah, is that it's got split leaf. It's a split leaf.
Yeah, it's got that big leaf that has the splits there.
Not the other one, right?
The other one.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that one's cool though.
It's
That
doing
one's
well, but I
cool.
do have some questions about it because I see a lot of plant groups. This is a very popular plant,
Yeah.
and it's growing well. I repotted it last year because it was very root bound, and it seems to be doing well. However, it is yellowing in some places. Maybe that's just older leaves. It's going to be staked to keep it supported. It's a very heavy plant, so it is doing well, but yeah, that could be answered later too.
Monstera deliciosa, I love those ones. They're so vigorous and easy to grow, but if it's yellowing and it's an older plant, it's probably a nutrient deficiency.
Okay.
If it was root bound when you repotted it, frankly, they grow roots like nothing. Like they grow roots so powerfully. Even the one that I showed you earlier, that one's only been in its new pot for 2 months and it's already poking out the bottom. It might just need a bigger pot, especially if you have to stake it to keep it upright. They also really like to climb, and they tend to have more vigorous growth if they're climbing up a pole of some kind. And some of the ones that are sold, like I noticed all the ones that are sold at like Walmart and Home Depot, there's lots of plants in that one pot. So it might just be struggling for space.
So maybe we need to separate it maybe.
Potentially, exactly. If it's one plant in a pot, maybe it just needs a little bit more space. If it's multiple, maybe you can make a bunch of plants.
We'll have to have a look at that one, Amy.
Yep.
That's the one that's been a struggle lately at the library. Okay, so I have Stephanie saying, how do I know when to fertilize? How many times a year? And what is best to use? My plants are in hard pots. How can I tell if it needs rerooting if I can't squeeze it to see if the roots are full?
Well, for fertilizing, I almost never fertilize my plants. Most of the ones that I have grow really slowly, like the Hoyas behind me, they grow very slowly. They don't need a lot of fertilizing unless like in springtime when there's lots of new growth and they're really trying to take off, then they could use an extra nutrient boost. But otherwise, the soil that I use has a lot of fertilizer already. And I mix in worm castings when I repot the plants. Exactly. It's already feeding itself. My bigger plants, like the big Monstera that I have downstairs, that one I fertilize with like a diluted, you know what, even just Miracle Grow. I'm using up an old container that I have, and my big plants that are stationary that I don't repot every few months. Yeah, just a diluted Miracle Grow in the spring when they're growing actively, because in the winter, they're not going to use the nutrients fast enough because they're not growing fast enough.
That's true. That's another way of knowing it too, eh? But unless if you feel like it's, you know, every time you water your plants too, the water compacts your soil more and more too. So depending on what you're using, it could become an issue too.
Absolutely. You don't want the fertilizer really concentrated in that soil. It'll harm your roots, and you'll get like spots, discolored spots on your leaves if it starts to burn your roots.
Okay.
Spots but
not good.
No, spots not good. And yeah, I always err on the side of not fertilizing unless I'm really seeing not great growth or really weak colors, and I can't explain it from like lack of light, then maybe I'll fertilize, but they need a lot less than we think.
Yeah.
Fertilizers, it's mostly like for outside plants that are really quick at growing and need that burst because they have such a short growing season.
Mhm. Okay, so Lauren was explaining to me at the beginning her soil, what she uses for her soil. So maybe you can explain it to the group, how you add the perlite and worm castings, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I like making custom mixed soil for all my plants. So I do a lot of research about what they need and their natural growing conditions before I decide what soil to use. So all of my aroids, which is a family name for like pothos, philodendron, monsteras, they get soil that's mostly bark. So I take pro mix soil from Canadian Tire and I mix in a lot of extra perlite, some orchid bark, worm castings, and then I also buy this, it's reptile bark, it's for bedding, reptile bedding. And it's little bark chips. It comes in a big bag from Amazon. And I mix a lot of that into the soil so that my aroids have a nice, loose, chunky soil to grow through. Aroids and Hoyas as well naturally grow in like the crooks of trees and stuff. So they really appreciate a really barky soil, and that's what they dig their roots into. And water also drains really quickly through it because the bark pieces don't retain water and the perlite helps everything flow. And that keeps the aroids and the Hoyas really, really healthy. As for other plants, like with really fine roots, like the peperomias, your paleas, lots of things that need water all the time, like the ones that need to stay nice and spongy and moist, I use just regular pro mix mixed with some extra worm castings and the extra perlite, because they don't need the bark and their roots are too fine to really dig into the bark as well. So I'm really just taking up soil space, like pot space for no reason. But every plant that I grow usually receives like a custom soil mixture, and I just keep all the bags in my basement and mix and match. And I play around with the ratios as well. So it's a lot of like trial and error and figuring out what grows best. And sometimes I'll plant a few in different mixes and see what works for the plant. Yeah.
Okay. Any suggestions for plants that thrive in lower light?
Yeah. Your pothos do pretty well in lower light. Like they'll tolerate any lighting conditions. A lot of begonias are lower light plants. One of my favorite ones, I'll show you right here. I just planted this one. It's a begonia maculata. It's a polka dot begonia. This one doesn't like direct light. Direct sunlight will burn these leaves, but it's a cane begonia. So it grows very, very tall, really elegant long leaves. This is a good one for your kind of like lower light corners in your living room.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And when in doubt, sometimes I actually just rotate plants through my dark corners. When I want something to brighten up a space in a corner, I'll put a plant there and leave it there for a week or two and then move it back to a window and put another one in its spot, because it can tolerate a week or two with lower light, no issues.
And then it gives the ones that didn't get a little bit more.
Exactly, absolutely. And then you can keep your spaces looking bright and everything gets sunlight when it needs it. Yeah. And I do that a lot because I have a really small house and not a lot of natural sunlight.
And that's why you put up all of these nice grow lights.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. Yeah. I needed something because this room has a really small window. I wasn't getting the natural light.
Okay. And what kind of light did you put up again?
These are LED shop lights from Amazon. So I buy them in the natural daylight spectrum, and they're really good at keeping most of the tropical plants alive. I played around with the different heights and the length of time that they stay on. And it was kind of a dicey trial and error time because I sunburned a lot of plants. So if you go this route, definitely play around with them for a month or two with some plants that you don't love, because I sunburned quite a few of them before getting my routine, before getting them working.
So did you put them all on a timer or?
Yeah, exactly. There are 4 different plant timers working in this room because there's a bunch of different shelves with different grow lights. Some of them are different wattages because I bought them at different times. So I've fiddled with the timers until my plants are growing happily and not really burning.
Well, everything that I've seen coming out of your place has been like immaculate.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, very healthy, very vibrant, very colorful, you know. Even my African violet, it bloomed for the second time. There's only one of them that didn't bloom for some reason. We're still working on that one. Oh,
well, maybe a little bit higher light. I find they like.
Well, we've just put it closer to the window now, and it's much happier, you can tell. So maybe it'll keep doing that and finally flower. How much time do you spend watering and rotating your plants? That's a good one.
Oh, I spend way too much time watering my plants. I have quite a few in this room, plus a ton of them in the living room and kind of entranceway downstairs. So I try and spend like 15 minutes every day just looking at them and watering them. So I'll fill up a jug of water and go to a zone I hadn't been the day before and just see what needs water and try and keep them all alive.
But it makes it less overwhelming too, so that you're not doing it all at once.
Absolutely, because doing it all at once takes a while. When I fall behind, it takes a whole Saturday to water everything and check on everything and make sure I'm all caught up. Yeah, it's definitely a little out of control.
Are snake plants good in low light? Or snake plants are good in low lights too. This is what, okay, sorry.
Yep, snake plants can be good in low light, but if you put them in low light, you have to be careful to water them like only once every 2 months or so. Because if you water them more than that, they're not using the water in the soil because they're not in light strong enough to grow in. So sure, they'll tolerate lower light corners, absolutely. Just don't water them ever, pretty much. Until they have really deep wrinkles and the leaves almost look like they're going to fall over a little bit. That's when you soak them and give them the water that they need and then put them back in their dark corner. I have mine not in a really high light location. It's kind of maybe 5 or 6 feet back from an eastern window, so it doesn't get a lot of direct light, and I water my snake plant every 5 or 6 weeks.
Oh, wow. Okay. I have Brad asking, what are some pet-friendly plant types, and what should we avoid? I guess it all depends on the pet too.
It depends on the pet. Not every pet eats houseplants. Most houseplants are going to be toxic to some degree, like to your pets. I don't have pets. Well, I have a couple of lizards. They don't eat the plants though. I don't have pets, so it's not something that I've really looked at, except when I do research, I find almost all of them, certainly all of the fancy, pretty colored ones, the begonia I showed you earlier, toxic to pets. There's a few that aren't, but I'm not sure about them off the top of my head. I'd recommend researching a lot before you get a house plant, just to make sure that it's not something that will poison your pets.
Yeah, maybe another idea too is to macrame something, put it up on a higher shelf. I know cats are a little bit finicky, they're very agile and they can get in a little bit everywhere, but maybe do it in a place that they can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Way. Or use like terrariums.
Yeah, terrarium, that's a good one, because even then you're going to add a lot of nice humidity in there too for those that really need it. I don't know, like maybe an orchid or something. Those
absolutely
orchids that
I even have behind me an old fish tank full of philodendrons and syndapsis, and that would probably be good to keep your cats away from it as well. And they appreciate the higher humidity.
That's right. That's cool. Who would have thought to use that to grow plants, right?
Well, it's working really, really well. So I transfer them here when they're not big enough to really go down into my living room and have and live independently in a pot. So this way I can mix them all together and I baby them a little bit this way.
That's true. So lots of little things that we need to remember when we're looking at plants or buying plants or taking care of our plants, watering, fertilizing. Does anybody have any more questions? I did. I asked. So go ahead, Michael. Is that you? Go ahead.
So I've got a jade plant that I don't think it's growing anymore, and I wonder if does it need to be repotted or something? Is the pot too small?
Jade plant, is that a succulent? Yeah.
Jades are a succulent.
Okay.
They can be tough.
This is the jade plant. So it's it's not in a super large pot, but I would have thought that it would have gotten bigger before it needs to be repotted.
I definitely say it needs to be not repotted right now. Maybe even it's in too big of a pot. If it's not growing at all, it's probably because it's busy filling out the soil with its roots, right? If you're not seeing any above soil growth, it's probably focusing all of its energy to fill out the soil and make sure it's anchored really well in that pot. Succulents like to be super root bound before they're going to give you really good growth on top. I don't have any jade plants. I've killed them all. But when I did, I almost never repotted them. They like to be really squished. I'll use like little plastic shot glasses to grow them.
I have a jade plant. I have a little experience with jade plants. I had a jade plant that had a trunk that was at least an inch wide or more, and you can overwater a jade plant. I didn't realize this, when I'm watering, because I've got a lot of different plants. I've got plants that don't like a lot of water. I have plants that like lots of water, and then you keep dumping water in it, and it actually rotted the root. Now I was fortunate; I was able to propagate a few of my ends, and they look like they are starting to grow. But they are a very finicky plant, and they will tell you when they need to be watered. Their leaves start to get wrinkly. Like when their leaves start to get wrinkly, that's when you water them. You can go weeks without watering a jade plant. So
because it's a succulent.
Yeah.
Succulents don't like wet roots.
But Michael, if you just watch the leaves, it will tell you what it needs, because you can rot out the root. You can rot out the trunk.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, there was a question about fungus gnats, that they're a common problem, and I'm sure we've all had this. Actually, I had my house infested once, but let's not go there. Don't use outside dirt. Use potting soil. Makes a huge difference. I had no idea. So the question was, how would I eliminate them, and how could we avoid them to return?
They are tough, honestly. They're a tough one to eliminate because they're so prolific, and they're not overly harmful to your plants. So there's not even, sometimes I just ignore them if there's one or two. But once you start to get fungus gnats, they're going to multiply really quickly, especially if you have a lot of plants that like damp soil. So I have a lot of like peperomias and paleas, and they like being humid and damp, and fungus gnats will get out of control. So I use a lot of these things. They're sticky yellow pads. You can buy them. They're sticky traps. You can buy them at like Canadian Tire and Walmart. I order bigger ones from Amazon, and then I like cut them into pieces. Just have a lot of plants. So that's really good at catching the adults, but the adults are busy laying eggs in your soil, and that's where the babies are growing, and the sticky traps aren't going to stop them, and you're just going to have recurring problems. So I also use hydrogen peroxide. So what I do is I mix 1 part hydrogen peroxide to about 5 parts water, and I use it to water my plants. I wait till they're nice and dry, and then I water my plants with this mixture, and it's gut-wrenching at first because you're thinking you're watering with hydrogen peroxide, but it's good for your plants, and you can hear it kind of like popping and crackling in the soil, and that's it killing off any like larvae and eggs and stuff that you don't want in your soil. So whenever I notice fungus gnats becoming to be an issue, I water with hydrogen peroxide, probably every month in the summer, maybe less in the winter because I'm not watering quite as often, but often enough.
And usually those fungus gnats, like I said, I had an issue with them. It sounds like they like to grow on the top layer, like the last inch at the top of your plants, right? And that's where they're laying their eggs.
Absolutely. So you could also even sprinkle diatomaceous earth at the top of your soil, and that helps to kill them. I actually have some down here. I tried to set up everything I need. So you can also use diatomaceous earth. This looks like a fine white powder. It looks like icing sugar when you sprinkle it on, but it's really just really finely crushed like crustaceans and stuff. And to the larva, it's sharp and it cuts their skin and it kills them. Anyway, so you can sprinkle this on top of your soil, but it's only effective when it's dry. So once it gets wet, then you need to reapply it, which is why I use this a lot less, and I use more of the hydrogen peroxide. I know some people also use sand or top their soil with like rocks or like pumice or perlite on top, but I find that it makes it hard for me to tell when the plant needs water. So even though that is an effective solution to top your soil with sand, I don't personally use it because I like to see when my soil is dry.
So that's another good point that you're making there, is not to put too much stuff on top so that you can put
Mhm.
your finger in there a little bit better.
Absolutely. And putting
Yeah.
rocks on top will just compress your soil and kind of trap your roots, and they don't get enough like air and circulation. So
True.
yeah.
True.
So I'd really recommend the hydrogen peroxide, as scary as it is to water your plants with peroxide.
I've heard it's very, very good for that.
Mhm.
I've read about it quite a few times too. And what would you do to eliminate spider mites? Yes, I don't like the sound of that, guys. Stephanie
Yes,
has
spider
had,
mites are awful.
yeah. She says that
Uh,
she's had reoccurring issues with those little buggers this year.
Spider mites are annoying. They can get out of control really quickly, but luckily they're really easy to eliminate with soap and water. I don't use anything special for spider mites. I often just use like insecticidal soap, or I'll even use dish soap mixed with water, and I mix it up in a big spray gun and I spray down all of the leaves. And when I notice an active spider mite infestation, like not just I'm not just being proactive. If I see an actual spider mite infestation, I'm going to take that whole plant and I'm taking it to the bathtub, spray it down with my insecticidal soap, and use my hands to wash every leaf, because sometimes the insecticidal soap doesn't penetrate like their webs, and if any of them are still living, you're just going to have recurring problems. So I take them all to the bathtub and I just wash down every leaf. Sometimes I'll change the soil as well, and by continuing to spray down your plants, you're making them not desirable for a spider mite infestation. If your plants are always being sprayed down with insecticidal soap, which is nice and mild on your plants, like it isn't a hard chemical, I use a lot of this Safer's insecticidal soap.
Okay.
Or I'll mix dish soap and water, like palm olive and water, just a bit, about a teaspoon to a jug of water.
And it doesn't hurt your plants at all?
No, I haven't noticed it hurting my plants at all. But I haven't also tried them on some of the delicate ones like caladiums or calatheas. Like I haven't really tried it on those ones.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend testing it before just going for it. Because I have a lot of like philodendrons and pothos and monstera and peperomia, and it's great for all of those. I haven't noticed any leaf damage.
And those are your leaves that are a little bit more shiny, right? They're not like let's say like an African violet. Those kinds of leaves are picky and feathery, almost like a fur. So you wouldn't want to do it on that.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do it on that. I would still feel fine about spraying down my African violets, but your insecticidal soap spray will probably damage the leaves. Oh, sorry, not the leaves, the flowers. The leaves will be fine. The flowers will probably turn brown and wilt. So that's what I've noticed when I've had to spray down African violets. But
it doesn't kill them. They'll might reflower again later.
Absolutely. Okay. It'll just damage the active flowers, and the leaves will be fine and your plant will keep flowering.
Okay. Any more questions, everybody? Okay, let me share my screen here again. That was awesome. So we also have a succulent care session coming up with Fancy Plants. This will be in December. I believe it's the first Saturday in December. So this will be another one. Like Lauren was saying, I'm not very good with succulents, but I'm hoping to get better, and I keep trying. You know what? At the end of the day, if you kill a plant, who cares? You can get another one. You can try it again, right? You want to be careful though. Also, don't forget that the library has a lot of resources for you. We have Hoopla, we have Libby. Those are both on our website, which you see in the middle of the screen here. We also have books in-house at the library in Timmins, at the library in South Porcupine. We are always there to help you. These two resources, Hoopla and Libby, those are ebooks and audiobooks. You'd be surprised at how many of those that we have. They're really great resources, especially if you're homebound and you can't get out, or if you just prefer reading something on your computer, on your tablet, or your e-reader. Okay, I love audiobooks, and you'd be amazed at how many of them that you can read or listen to, essentially, when you have the audiobooks going. I drive to work 10 minutes every day, and I can get through a 15-hour book in not too long. Makes the ride a little less boring than the radio. So Lauren has graciously given us 8 plants. So I've got 4 Peperonia carperata frost. I know I botched that, but that's okay. And then we have 4 of the Piccolo Banda. So these have been packaged nicely. I will put your names in the draw. I will stop sharing my screen because I want to make sure there were a couple of people that popped in right after. I have Jean saying, thanks for the session. Unfortunately, I was running late, but that's okay. You joined us now. And then we have somebody else, Talia, saying, great job, Lauren. And then, okay, so let's see. Let's make sure that everybody's name is in here. Can you guys, no, you guys can't see my screen. Give me a second. I will share that again. I think I missed just the one person that just came in at the end, which was Jean. So let me add that. Okay, everybody. Can you guys look at your names on the side there and let me know if you're in or not? Is there anybody missing? No? I'll stop sharing just for a few seconds just to go make sure. No, doesn't look like I'm missing anybody. Okay, perfect. Let's see here. We're going to do this fun interactive thing as soon as I share it again. Share right here. There you go. So let's do the first one. How do I do that? I'm going to shuffle you guys. Thumbs up? No. Where is it? How do I do this, guys? A new one? Load default names? No. Oh no, don't do that. They changed my names, guys. Okay, so how many are we in this presentation? Screen sharing has stopped. We are, I believe, 8 total of public members. So, you know what? We've got 8 plants. So we will have 8 plants for you. So what we're going to do is I'm hoping that we have all of our names on your registration. And I believe I have everybody's phone numbers. I will call each and every one of you in a few minutes and make sure where you'd like to pick it up. You can either pick it up at the Timmins Library or you can pick it up at the South Porcupine Library, and you can let me know that. So I'm going to call you guys once we're done and make sure who wants to pick up where, okay? So let me finish the presentation with CM Shields Branch wants to share its seed library with you. So we have this great seed library at the South Porcupine Library. And essentially the premise behind the program, I designed it because I felt that we needed more food sustainability in our area. And we needed to change some of the biodiversity of the plants that we grow here. For every seed that you start growing, seed and then grow, seed and grow. If you do that 3 times, that plant is supposed to grow better, and you've actually changed the chemical makeup of the plant. So it's really good, especially in our area. The better the plants grow here, the better crops we'll get, right? So that's what we're doing with the seed library. It is free. What we want you to do is we want you to come in, choose your seeds, go home, grow anything and everything that you're growing, and share your seeds with us eventually. Sometimes it doesn't work out, that's okay. Other things will work out, and then we can keep going like that. The library is all about sharing, right? So now I'd like to say thank you so much to Lauren and for everybody for joining us, and hope to see everybody at the library. And I'm about to give you guys a call, okay? We'll say goodbye for now. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Louise.
You're welcome.